Alrighty, folks, it is day after Fed Day. It's time to pick up the pieces. And as expected, three things happened. One, we got the quarter point rate cut. Two, Jerome Powell is a hawk, not a dove. And three, mortgage rates went up, not down. Shocking. Absolutely no one on this channel, but probably a lots of people who don't watch this. Jonathan, what do you think of all those three things? And we'll get into finally why I think the Fed is a complete mess. But let's talk about those first three things.
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, I don't think anybody who's like following real estate or following the Fed should be surprised either that they lowered rates or that it just caused mortgage rates to go up. That's what happened the last time they cut. And there are some very good reasons why the cuts actually spook the markets into selling bonds, right? Because they think that the rate cuts are going to cause inflation to increase. And if you're looking at long-term bonds, that really scares you because it really erodes the value of your bond, right? So, so there was a bit of movement out of longer dated bonds as a result. I think it just shows that, you know, there's so much uncertainty and chaos in the economy right now that it's very hard for the markets to kind of see a lot of long-term positivity, or at least to see like what the direction is. Let me take that back. I think it's what they're reacting to is that they just think there's a lot of volatility, and when there's volatility and uncertainty, that's when you start like I think, looking for more interest, right? You're like, I got to be paid more. There's more risk. You know, I'm not willing to hold assets that don't pay me much, right? So
yeah, I think the average consumer, right, the average investor is very much like the Fed. They're confused. For the longest time, the last 30 or 40 years, it's been really easy to focus on either full employment or inflation. We don't have that luxury today. Even the Fed in their dot plots talking about higher unemployment, higher inflation. Right? That's their freaking forecast. The 18 people that are supposed to know this thing better than anybody else are telling us stagflation is coming.
Yeah.
And they're confused. And again, I want to be clear. I think the Fed is a complete mess. I think the fact that they voted 11-1 is a complete farce. I think it was, you know, people trying to protect the institution, protect this or protect Powell. It was complete nonsense. It should have likely been the first time we had a three-way vote. What would that have looked like? I clearly think there's a Fed president, and you see it in the dot plot, that wanted to not cut. For example, if you don't know what I'm talking about, somebody in the dot plot said, we will raise rates in 2025. So the fact that you got that person to vote on a cut is, you know, an insult to my intelligence. Next up, we have the other extreme. We have a Fed president talking about 6 rate cuts in 2025. We're not talking 2026. We're talking 2025. So again, I think the Fed is a complete mess. At the end of the day, 9 Fed presidents voted for 2 more cuts. So again, October, December. 6 voted for none. Again, a complete mess. And again, 1 voting to raise rates from here. So I think we're all confused. And I think the Fed's confused. They don't seem to have a story. And it's maybe because it's changing. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, well, there's clearly a lot of pressure on the Fed now because the Fed's independence is being undermined, which also, frankly, I think spooks the markets too. This is something that if trust in the Fed declines, it will cause trust in the dollar to decline.
Rates go
right?
Up. Yeah.
And that's going to cause more inflation, and that's going to cause rates to go up in the long term. Right.
No question. I agree with. If the Fed loses just the mystique of independence, the bond vigilantes will take rates higher. Be careful what you wish for.
And it'll be the foreign bondholders, right? I mean,
correct.
Because the ones who are sort of outside the system, not wedded to the politics of any one particular side or the other, but just looking at it in terms of how is this going to affect, not infect, well, that's a Freudian slip maybe, but how's it going to affect my my investment, right? Or my trust in the US system. I mean, listen, the US has benefited from being like the world safe haven for like since World War II. And now we're in a situation where really all bets are off. And a lot of that safe haven status depended on the rule of law and, independence of the Fed, things like that, which are all being undermined right now. And so the US can't really have it both ways. It can't say, oh, we're the safe haven of the world, but we're also going to manipulate stuff to try to, you know what I mean? You can't, we're going to change the data. We're going to, fire people who put out data we don't like. We're going to, all of these things have an impact, and it really doesn't matter. Like
it's absolutely, you're pointing at the right place. It's the foreign buyers.
Yeah. And right? I'm like, I want to draw an analogy, right? Like, it doesn't matter if you believe in climate change or not, because the insurance companies are just following the data. And your insurance rates are going up, right? You don't have to believe in it. It's really irrelevant. Like you can't go to the insurance company and say, I don't believe in climate change, so lower my rate. The insurance company is like, we're seeing more hurricanes. We don't care why it's happening. It's happening. Your rates are going up, right? And it's the same thing with like the bond market, and especially with the foreign investors. The foreign investor, we've got, if I'm on LinkedIn and I'm seeing all these people like arguing about Trump is right, Trump is wrong, whatever.
Yeah, it's a great analogy.
It does not matter, because people who don't have a dog in this fight, right?
They're voting with their
they're voting with their dollars, with their wallets, with their own self-interest in mind, and they're looking at this and saying the U.S. looks like a big effing mess to me right now.
Yeah, and you can see it in the numbers. The gold investments by foreign entities is actually outpacing treasuries. That hasn't happened in 4 decades, and it's happening now. That just tells you where the foreign investors are moving their money. They're like, hey, the risk premium isn't there. It's a basket case. I'm going to go into a hard asset like gold, and it's another reason gold and frankly silver are ripping. Is because foreign investors, to your point, they don't have a dog in the fight, but do have a lot of money. They're like, hey, too hard, and that's really what people say sometimes. It's just like too freaking hard. I'm going elsewhere.
Yeah. And a lot of those investors, frankly, to bring this back to real estate, a lot of those investors previously would have invested in US real estate as a safe, hard asset.
Sure. Of course.
Now, a lot of them, I think, are looking at the situation and going, I don't really know where this is going.
Yeah.
Right. Like they don't even have to say, I think it's going in the wrong direction. All they have to say is like, I don't really know where this is going.
Pull back.
Yeah. And so like, I'm just going to wait and see. Right. And so that, that can affect real estate investing. And then just in general, like uncertainty just isn't good for the economy, because eventually that uncertainty sort of trickles down to everybody and they all pull back. And then you get like a real recession, So,
and that's where we are. Again, I've been talking about on my channel, the consumer's been uncertain for a while, as have small businesses, right? They're not hiring and not firing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you add on the investor class now, this could get bad, right?
Yeah.
If people just collectively pull back.
And there's stuff happening now where like, the tariffs are really starting to take a bite, because when they so people, who had been getting stuff, from China tariff free for their small business, like whether it's like the prosciutto that they order for their pizza.
Yeah. This is the de minimis stuff, right? The stuff under $600. Yeah.
Right. And now the US Post Office is sending them a message saying, hey, come and pay this tariff before you get your pepperoni, right? Mm-hmm. Or before you get the new part for your pizza oven that's only manufactured in China. It's great to say, oh yeah, we're going to reshore all this stuff. I mean, even if it does happen, it's going to take years and years and years, right? So to retool everything, build new factories. I mean, it's having a real effect, and there's like not really any upside. Like people are paying more money for tariffs, or they're foregoing the inputs that they need for their business. This is going to have an impact too. And like, so when outside investors see all this stuff going on, they're like, you know what, there's other places I can put my money. Maybe that's just going to be gold. Maybe that's going to be some other government bonds paying more money, right? Maybe it's going to be like who knows what it is, but
Yep. I love where this is going, because I've been thinking about this for a while, and this really isn't a real estate thing, but again, it will impact real estate because it impacts rates. President Trump's has a real challenge on his hands right now. I think the message, the vibe, the collective, psyche right now is slipping away. And, he has a midterm election now in about 13 months. And if he loses the House or the Senate, and obviously both, he's going to be a lame duck president. So where I'm going with this is he is going to do everything he can. And boy, you haven't seen anything yet. That's my message for folks. Is you think Trump is trying to goose rates and goose the economy right now? You ain't seen nothing yet. Get ready for first-time homebuyer credits. Get ready for this. Get ready for that. It is coming, because he has to change this vibe shift. He needs to keep both the House and the Senate. And right now, it's probably a coin flip if he can keep them both. So he's going to be focused on that.
I mean, and listen, the incentive is there for a whole lot more deficit spending, right? If you're objective, no, I mean, they just had the big beautiful bill. All these cuts were pushed through. Those cuts are going to start, making themselves felt, right? Plus, I mean, they've done a lot of basically counter growth policy, right, under Trump, right? A lot between the tariffs and the government cuts. This is all counter growth. When that starts hitting, the incentive to reverse course and hard is going to be very strong. And so, and what does that lead to? Well, more inflation, right? So if you talk about, I mean, the Fed is predicting stagflation
clearly
right now, before you even then have sort of some massive government stimulus plan that's passed, because Trump is worried about the 2026 election. And frankly, so are the Republican members of Congress. Right?
Yeah.
So
that's what happens.
And
all of them want to be reelected.
And then that just leads to, then the whole thing starts higher interest. None of this is good, for the economy. And I think, this is, I want to take this back a little, just a step back, because if you think about how did we get here, and I don't mean like the 2024 election. What I mean is how did we get here where we are in this moment in history? A big piece of you got to look back to the Great Moderation, right? Now, the Great Moderation, low interest rates, low inflation, the business cycle is over, all this kind of stuff. Everybody, goes hey, Alan Greenspan, you were a genius. You cracked the code. You got rid of the business cycle. The thing that was also going on at the same time that enabled all of this was free trade, exporting jobs to China, making everything super dirt cheap. That's why inflation was low. We basically exported.
Yeah, we exported deflation. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I would say we exported inflation, we imported deflation, right? So,
okay. Yeah.
So
that's better
right?
said. Yeah. That's better said.
And so, we kind of broke that link between that sort of, wage price spiral of inflation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So we helped consumers, but we really did, hollow out our manufacturing core.
Right.
Again.
Right. You really couldn't pull off both of those things at the
No,
same
you can't. It was
They're
one of the
totally
other.
related to each other, right?
Yep.
You had to hollow out the manufacturing core in order to basically get rid of inflation, right?
Correct.
Now, if you say, hey, we're going to unwind that, right? That means, back to wage price spiral inflation, back to stagflation, right? We're not going to be able to have it both ways anymore. We're not going to be able to say we can keep interest rates super low and juice asset prices and also have a lot of cheap stuff that people can buy when they're borrowing against their house because it's cheap to borrow against their house, right? And that can fuel inflation with the wealth effect. You start raising tariffs, trying to reshore things. That's going to cause wages to rise here. And look, you can say that's a good thing. I don't think anybody would argue that like raising wages in the US is a bad thing.
There's
But
just
there's
something that
trade-offs.
happens after that.
There's trade-offs for everything is the point,
Right.
right? Like you
Yeah.
can't really have like a low inflation, low interest rate, high wage economy. Like they don't go together, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's
not for very long. Right.
yeah, not for very long, right? So
Yeah.
or at least not high wage economy for making that stuff, like the consumer goods, right? That's
Correct.
really the point. You can have high wages in, you know, for people in services, for professions, for all that kind of stuff. But if you want to try to like bring the bottom back up again and kind of squash that wealth gap, like there are things that happen as a result. And like Wall Street's not going to be happy with a lot of that stuff. And I think a lot of consumers are not going to be happy with the price of everything going up because it's frankly more expensive. So like, the point is, my last point in this is I think Americans too often, and especially over the last 40 years, you see this in Congress, you see this everywhere. It's like, we want it all. We want all the stuff without the pain. And we've been trained to believe we can get all the stuff without the pain, whether the pain is higher taxes, higher prices, whatever, higher unemployment, however the pain is felt. It's like, we're supposed to like not suffer any pain. I don't know. We've lost like our ability to like put up with difficult stuff, right? And
well, let's talk about that, because again, I think something you and I've seen certainly over the last couple of decades since the dot-com crisis is the Fed's playbook is really simple. Pain happens, crisis happens, rates go to zero.
Yep.
And you know, I think what you and I are talking about, don't let me put words in your mouth, but I think this is what you and I are saying. Certainly what I'm saying is I think the money printer has been turned on and it's warming up again. And it could very easily start going brr again. And that will have, to your point, ramifications that, you know, people aren't going to like, AKA inflation.
Yeah. And, you know, I mean, there's a lot to dig into here, but so, you know, I've often seen it said that, you know, well, interest rates have to stay low because the government has to finance the debt.
I've heard that. Yeah.
Right. And I think what people don't understand is that that's really reversing the causality. Interest rates are not low because the government has to finance the debt. The government built up this big debt because interest rates were low. They acted rationally, just like the family that says, hey, interest rates are low. I can pull money out of my house to go spend on stuff because the debt service is low, right? Congress was like, hey, we don't have to make any tough choices. We don't have to cut services that people want. We don't have to raise their taxes to pay for those services because debt is so cheap. We can just pile on more debt and it's cheap. And if you look at the graph, I actually pulled this graph this morning. If you look at the growth of the federal budget deficit, it's after 2000 that it really starts to accelerate, right?
Yep,
and
parabolic.
That coincides with low interest rates, right? The causality is the interest rates, not the federal deficit. If interest rates were normal, then Congress would not have been able to say, hey, it's all free. They would have had to make, I'm not saying that they would have like, you know, not run up the debt. Although look, in the late 90s, what did we have? We had balanced budgets, surpluses, and paying off the debt, right? So I know what's going on with Michael. I seem to have lost you.